Chapter 2. Through the Veil of Severance, Ade Tosin stood at the edge of a rugged plain next to a thick horizon of ancient trees. Before them lay the last border of wild earth, which led to the narrow pathway of trees leading to the corrupt forest. The corrupt forest was a cursed sanctuary of twisted beasts and divine fragments that had gone wrong, a sacred hunting ground and death sentence for essence wielders. A place where even the strongest of warriors became prey to the wild of corruption. Ade and Tosin were surrounded by 15 hunters, men and women dressed in crimson wear, which was a significance of their uniformity as members of the Red Hunters cohort. This cohort was one of Ajegun's most elite hunters and warriors. It consisted of 9 men and 6 women. Their crimson wares bore the sigil of a blood sun dripping into a downward blade, a mark of the oath they swore to the cohort as hunters and warriors. They all bore the same kind of eyes, quiet and cold, yet somehow warm beneath the surface. The contradiction was unsettling, as though each of them had learned to balance ruthlessness and ease within the same breath. They looked like people who had seen too much, endured far more than most ever would, and survived every shade of it. To Ade, they stood apart from every cohort he'd encountered in Ajegun. There was something strange about them, something dangerous, yet oddly human. A paradox of laughter and scars, light and shadow. It was deeply fascinating in a weird way. At their center stood Mr. Paul, the leader of the cohort, a man who looked carved from dark stone. His muscles were corded with age and experience. His sleeveless red robe fluttered faintly in the wind, adorned with cowries, beads, and ancestral antiques. A small calabash with a red ribbon dangled from his armband like a silent talisman. Tribal marks swept down his cheeks in ceremonial arcs, while red ribbons coiled around his bald head. A long, wicked pole blade wrapped in cloth was rested slant across his back. He turned to address his cohort with a calm but strong voice which carried authority like a hammer. "These are the new recruits I told you about." He turned, facing Ade and Tosin with a stretched arm. "The thick-skinned devil and the merchant ghost." Then he glanced over his shoulder, nodding in gesture, and began introducing the entire cohort to both newcomers. First was a tall man whom he introduced as Big Andy. Big Andy stood at a height of about 6 feet 6. Not only that, he was big in stature, making him look like a giant amongst the other members of the cohort. No one had ever heard him speak since he joined. Rumors said he could speak but chose not to, while others whispered that he had no voice to give because he had his throat ripped by creatures of the corrupt forest. He was an awakened ranker of aberrant class. His power was rare. Not only could he endure devastating attacks because of his strong and towering body, he could also create an impenetrable dome for defense to ward off attacks from enemies. He was a living fortress and a breathing bastion of protection. On his back, he comfortably carried a towering shield patched together from the armored carapaces of corrupt beasts. He was the wall and shield of the cohort, their first line of defense. Ade and Tosin gestured at him with a nod as he gestured back at them politely without saying a word, reinforcing their curiosity of his taciturn nature. Next to be introduced was Zara, a petite, light chocolate-skinned girl who was deceptively delicate in appearance, as evident in her small stature. Though not necessarily the youngest in the group, she was often regarded as the baby of the cohort because of her looks and small stature. At 19, she was already a prodigy as an initiate-ranked healer of the warrior class. Her red robe draped over her small frame like flame over wax. Long crochet braids framed a soft, oval face which looked calm but sharp. Tosin, ever the fool, threw her a wink, but her gaze was enough evidence that he was barking at the wrong tree. It was the kind of gaze that could bore holes in his face if he wasn't careful. Seeing Zara's spiteful gaze and irritation to Tosin's flirtatious gesture, Ade sighed, and to the petite healer he said, "Please ignore his stupid behavior." Then he gave Tosin a firm slap to the back of the head. Then there was Sahid, a scarred but quiet man. A slant vertical scar ran across his face from his right brow down to his left chin, cutting through his expression like a history carved in blood. A long battle axe was strapped to his back, looking well worn, not from age, but from use. Though not necessarily taciturn like Big Andy, he was a man of very few words. His presence spoke of pain survived over the years as a hunter. He was an awakened ranker of aberrant class. He gave Ade and Tosin his disinterested look as they walked past him. Next to him was a tall and energetic girl of about 6 feet in height. She had a statuesque and well-defined physical figure, not necessarily slender, but not stocky either. She was stocked and defined in the right places. She was elegant with an ebony skin that gleamed like obsidian polish under the sun. On her hair, she had green braids decorated with red, shimmered rich beads, which screamed of rich traditional heritage and culture. From her athletic stature, it was evident that she was a seasoned hunter and warrior. Her crimson robe clung daringly to her figure, revealing just enough to command attention yet deliver a dire warning. Her long machete rested against the side of her hip, secured in a worn leather sheath. As an Earth-style essence wielder, she stood at the awakened rank of the Cyclone class, a formidable level of mastery that placed her among the strongest in the entire cohort. Only Ade matched her in rank and class, yet both were only superseded by Mr. Paul, their leader, who was an initiate elite with calm authority carried by a weight of experience and quiet power. Without waiting for Mr. Paul's usual introduction, she stepped forward and introduced herself to Ade and Tosin.
What up, guys? My name is Jumoki, but I prefer to be called Jomo for short,
she said with a smile, which the duo surprisingly found to be out of place amongst the members so far. Maybe it was because she was the first person who actually seemed to be giving them a warm welcome and not looking like she wanted to be done and over with the whole introduction. She humbly stated her position as the second in command of the cohort, only second to Mr. Paul, who was the leader. Tosin stood momentarily spellbound by her striking beauty and effortless poise. "Good essence," he muttered under his breath, half a compliment, half a reflex, before he even realized the words had escaped him. Ever the flirt, his gaze lingered longer than it should have, bold, testing, and almost playful. But she didn't spare him so much as a glance. Of course, she was no stranger to such compliments. As a young woman of near-perfect physique and commanding stature, she often attracted the kind of attention she neither sought nor welcomed. Men's lingering gazes and shallow words had long grown vile to her, as unpleasant reminders of a world too eager to claim what it didn't deserve. So when Tosin's flirtatious eyes lingered, she dismissed them without a thought. To her, his gaze was nothing more than a passing breeze, insignificant, weightless, and easily ignored. Ade, noticing this, shook his head at the pitiful yet funny state of his best friend. Standing a feet to her right was Abdul, a fire essence wielder. He had short golden braids, complemented by a lean and tall frame balanced with the kind of quiet strength earned not only from training, but from grit and survival in Ajegun slum. The confidence radiating from him was the tempered assurance of a young hunter who had seen enough to know his own worth. His features were chiseled and deliberate, and his skin bronzed by the harsh sun. His expression was also hard, unyielding, a mask that hinted at violence waiting just beneath restraint. It was the same hardened poise shared by young men who had clawed their way through life in places like Ajegun slum, young men like Ade. From one glance, Ade recognized the stillness in Abdul's eyes, that familiar mix of discipline and chaos. Abdul, in turn, seemed to read the same truth in Ade. Their silent exchange, a simple nod, spoke louder than words could. To Tosin, however, Abdul's demeanor was far less welcoming. He didn't bother to hide his disdain for Tosin's wandering eyes on the women of the cohort. One sharp glare from Abdul was enough to make Tosin flinch and look away, muttering something under his breath about hostile fire wielders. Mr. Paul further introduced the other members of the cohort accordingly. Like Jomo, some showed enthusiasm for the duo, while others gave the same indifferent and nonchalant expression. In total, the cohort consisted of 7 heavy hitters, 2 shield bearers, 4 light hitters, and 2 healers. A perfect combination of warriors. After the introduction, the journey into the corrupt forest began, and as they advanced through the tree path, Ade and Tosin walked behind, chatting in low voices. Then, with a shimmer, Tosin's form shifted. His battlesuit unfurled like essence threads in living armor. It was a black suit forged from the hides of corrupt beasts, layered with runes that pulsed like veins. Silver markings spread across the chest like twin boomerangs, their design both elegant and deadly. At his hips sat 2 silver crescent-shaped boomerangs, sharp and charged, whispering for flight. Ade, seeing this, was taken aback by the hide-modified suit, with his curiosity evident in his voice. "New battle suit?" Tosin grinned. "Yeah, I got it from a close associate in the essence market." Then he paused, noticing his friend's surprise at the suit. "I can hook you up if you want." But Ade scoffed, shaking his head. "You know I don't need or use battle suits." Tosin shrugged in defeat. "Yeah, show off." Then he asked again, "What do you think about the cohort?" Ade's gaze swept over the Red Hunters one more time in observation. They're a solid, balanced team with good offense and defense, complemented by 2 proper healers. That's really rare. So I can see why they're respected. Tosin nodded in agreement, as he had already come to the same conclusion. "Think we'll fit in?" he asked curiously. Ade shrugged nonchalantly with a scoff. "I guess we'll find out." Before them, a force field shimmered. It loomed on the horizon like the wrath of a forgotten god, a colossal blood-hued mass that arced across the skyline in jagged streaks of divine rage. Scarlet lightning crackled endlessly across the blood-hued force field, dancing like veins of divine fury. The air itself shimmered with oppressive essence, thick and suffocating, as if reality bent under the pressure of the sealed corruption within. Red energy bolts surged down from the heavens into the barrier's heart, anchoring it like cursed spears stabbing into the earth, each strike pulsing like a heartbeat of some slumbering ancient evil. This was known as the Veil of Severance, as hunters liked to call it, a mystical boundary that walled off the corrupt forest from the rest of the mortal world for obvious reasons. A prison for divine rot, and a tomb for forgotten horrors. Even the cohort, though they had seen this looming barrier countless times on their missions through the forest, paused for a moment to take it in. The sight still demanded reverence. Then, one after another, they stepped forward and the barrier swallowed them whole. Beyond the swirling barrier, the world inside was a warped, twisted silhouette of corrupted trees and crystalline shards jutting from the earth like broken bones. Nothing inside moved naturally as time within the barrier was wounded, limping forward in half-light, never fully night nor day. It was a liminal world, severed from the rhythm of reality. It wasn't just the drop in temperature or the sudden stillness that clung to the skin like damp cloth. It was the way the world itself seemed to exhale in reverse, as if the forest had been holding its breath all along, waiting for prey. The corrupt forest was alive, but not with the vitality of nature. This place pulsed with a twisted heartbeat, a rhythm that throbbed in the roots and howled in the leaves. The trees loomed like skeletal titans, their barks cracked with black rot and their branches clawed at the air as if reaching for some forgotten sun that wasn't there. Even the light here wasn't real. The only faint glow of light came from bioluminescent fungi and cursed motes of energy that floated like fireflies, casting hues of purple, green, and sickly gold. They moved with intent, weaving between the hunters like spirits whispering secrets from the age of gods. The ground squelched beneath the boots of the hunters, soft, veined, and pulsing. With every step, it felt less like stepping on earth and more like walking across the skin of something vast and buried. "Do you feel that?" Tosin whispered, with eyes darting from one distorted tree to another. "It's like the air's pressing in from all sides." "It always does," Ade replied coolly with sharp eyes that scanned the forest. Mr. Paul, who was in front leading the group, suddenly stopped in his movement. Tilting his head as if to focus his hearing on something silent, he raised a hand, bringing the group to a halt. Without a word, he signaled to Jomo and Sahid, who moved forward like panthers. One with earth essence thrumming under her foot, while the other with his battle axe brimming with blue essence at the ready. Without a word, the red hunters fell into formation effortlessly. The heavy hitters took up the front position, raising their shields at the ready. Zara and Ahis, the only two non-combatants and healers of the group, were centrally surrounded by the heavy and light hitters. The silence of the forest felt almost sacred, heavy, unbroken and wrong in a way that made the skin crawl. Even the winds seemed to have forgotten how to move. The trees stood still as if listening to something unspoken. Their gnarled limbs froze mid-motion while their bark was slick with faint veins of corruption that pulsed like a dying heartbeat. No one spoke or dared to. The only sound came from the faint clinking of weapons, the dull chime of steel shifting in nervous hands. Each ring echoed louder than it should have, swallowed and reshaped by the forest's breathless hush. Boots pressed into damp soil, soft and slow. The air was thick, tasting of iron and rot. Every inhale dragged a weight into their lungs. Sweat trickled down brows, not from heat, but from the unbearable tension hanging over them like a blade. Hearts thudded faster with every passing second, fast and heavy, making bile rise in the throat of each hunter. The rhythm of collective fear, the pulse of people waiting for something to go wrong. The silence wasn't just silence anymore. It was alive and it was listening. The longer it stretched, the more it felt like standing at the edge of a scream. And then, it broke. A sound snapped through the stillness like the crack of a twig underfoot, sharp and small yet loud enough to make every weapon jerk upward. The sacred silence shattered, spilling dread into every corner of the forest. A screech inhuman and wet tore through the darkness, followed by a thrashing of limbs and a heavy thud. From the blackened undergrowth, the forest vomited forth its monsters. 3 of them. Each was a grotesque blend of predator and corruption. One was horned, its face split down the middle like a blossomed wound with twin rows of serrated teeth. The second was lean and serpent-like, dragging itself with elongated arms fused with bone blades. And the third, It was a massive deformity steaming with corrupted essence. It was a brute, coated in armor-like hide, with eyes burning in pits of purple light. "Here they come, take formation," Mr. Paul barked. "They seem to only be of elite class. It's nothing we can't handle." Then Big Andy slammed his massive shield into the ground. Immediately, a shimmer of transparent essence spread out in a dome around the team, just in time to intercept the brute's charging attack. They snarled into the barrier, cracking the air with their impact. With the heavy collision, energy rippled through the dome, but it held.
Left flank.
Jomo shouted as she plunged her hands into the corrupted soil. Pillars of jagged stone erupted, pinning the serpent beast mid-lunge, but they were too weak. Though they scraped shallow cuts on its skin, it hissed and easily shattered through them.
They've got thick skin,
she cursed. Seeing his opening, Tosin lunged into the fray. His body vanished in a blur of kinetic light, then he reappeared mid-air with twin boomerangs in hand. "Hey, ugly! Let's dance!" he yelled. With that, he threw one silver crescent blade through the air. It spun forward, slicing across the eyes of one of the creatures before rebounding back into his grip. Flipping backward, he landed beside Ade, whose eyes never left the massive brute. "Ready?" Tosin asked. Ade cracked his neck and then said with a deep, low voice, "You take the other two. I've got this one." Before Tosin could protest, he burst forward. As he did, his red-crimson essence surged across his body like liquid wrath. Tightening veins crawled up his muscles like jagged snakes. Then he swung his punch, crashing into the chest of the massive beast with crackling force. The impact sent the creature skidding backward, carving a trench in the corrupted soil. Ade followed up, darting towards the beast, setting up his fist in preparation for another heavy punch. The beast retaliated with a deafening roar, slashing wildly, but Ade ducked, then spun into an uppercut and launched. The force of his punch sent waves into the air, lifting the beast off the ground and landing it with a heavy thud. Tosin, meanwhile, had become a blur, his boomerang spun in synchronized arcs, redirecting projectiles, slicing tendons, and striking pressure points with surgical precision. The serpent beast hissed in rage and pain, lashing out, but it was too slow because Tosin had slid under its belly, flipping up and releasing a trio of cowries bombs into its mouth. The impact was a loud boom that sent the creature reeling back, blinded and disoriented. "Zara, Sahid's been injured," Paul shouted in command as he pierced a creature through the mouth with his pole blade. From the center of the formation where she stood, she stretched her hand forward towards Sahid, who with a gash on his shoulder was still tussling with his axe at a corrupt creature. A flash of golden light burst from the petite healer's hand, forming a glyph that hovered over Sahid. In seconds, his wound pulsed, then sealed over. With that new surge of warm energy, he swung his axe in a horizontal arc, cleaving the creature in equal halves. Jomo, who was at the front of the formation, stomped her boots into the earth. With a crack, the ground reacted to the force of her essence. Stone spikes erupted the ground, impaling three horned creatures that were fast approaching. Abdul, spotting his opportunity, followed with a horde of flame-conjured blades. Each one found a target, bursting into them with flame essence energy. In a few seconds, all three beasts were on the ground, twitching, oozing, and burnt beyond recognition. In a few minutes, all creatures had been cut down by the cohort. Then fragments of blue and black essence began to hover in the air like dueling fireflies before crystallizing into shimmering orbs above the corpses. Normally, that kind of essence from creatures of this forest was pure corruption. Corrupt essence wasn't meant to be absorbed directly. It twisted, poisoned, and polluted whatever it touched. Wielders who tried to absorb it directly either died or turned into the very things they hunted. But when the corruption burned itself out, something strange always happened. The leftover energy condensed, cooling and solidifying into small crystalline spheres of essence orbs. The crystallization process stripped away the corruption within, leaving behind purified essence, something humans could safely absorb and make their own. To the hunters, these orbs were everything. They were a source of life, source of wealth, and source of power. The key to climbing the ladder of power ranks. To grow stronger and climb up the ranks from awakened to initiate, ascended, nullborn, and voidborn, one had to absorb as many essences orb as they could. The higher the potency of the orb, and the better their chances of attaining the aforementioned higher. In other words, the stronger the creature, the richer and more potent the essence orb. But that was far from the case with these orbs shimmering before Ade. He crouched beside them, watching the faint light flicker between his fingers. The color told the story before he even touched it. These were black and blue orbs, the least valuable of all. This was because they were from awakened elite class creatures, the weakest tier of the predators in the corrupt forest. Normally, these orbs did very little for power growth, but for people like Ade and this cohort from the slum, they weren't in a position to choose. They didn't have the kind of wealth or backing that the great guilds did. All they had was their grit, worn weapons, and willpower. The powerful houses and guilds had all the advantages. Vaults of essence reserves, rare relics, and elite warriors trained from childhood. They could afford to march deeper into the corrupt forest, past the safe zones and into places where the air itself throbbed with danger. Out there, the beasts were stronger, ranging from initiate rank to the ascended rank, and some even worse. Their essence orbs burned brighter, pulsing with power that could lift a wielder through ranks in a single night. Ade and his people could only dream of that kind of hunt. Their cohort didn't have the resources to breach those deeper zones. The Red Hunters were from the slums. They hunted what they could, took what little the less dangerous path of the forest gave, and survived one battle at a time. So while the guilds from the island grew richer and stronger, people like them were left circling the edges, fighting for black and blue orbs that barely nudged their essence forward. It wasn't glory or prestige, but it kept them alive and put food on their table, and that was the only thing that mattered. Ade rolled the orb across his palm, feeling the faint hum of energy inside. It was cold and almost gentle, holding no real danger or real power. It was just enough to keep him moving forward. Even at their weakest, these orbs were proof of survival, proof that you had gone into the dark and come back breathing, and in the corrupt forest, that alone was worth something. He then stood and tossed the orb to Tosin, who caught it easily, and then he walked away from the brute carcass without looking back. Tosin did not wait. He picked up more of the orbs with delight written all over his face. As a merchant affiliate in the Ajegun slum, this was like his gold and silver, and regardless of the value of the orb, whether black, blue, or higher, he always took them seriously. "Wow, you don't do half measures, do you?" he asked Ade while picking more orbs and stuffing them into the purse of his battlesuit. Ade shrugged, giving no verbal response. As they headed deeper into the forest, they continued to notice the eerie twist in the atmosphere. The air hung thick with damp rot and strange vibrations, as if the very soil remembered the clash of gods. Trees no longer looked like trees. Their bark was blackened and warped, twisted into monstrous shapes like they were frozen mid-scream. Some bent low to the earth, as if burdened with invisible sorrow, while others reached skyward in silent rage. Beneath their feet, the ground pulsed like something alive. Pale veins of essence corruption threaded through the roots and moss. Whispers echoed in the wind, not quite words, but not quite noisy either. They were memories clawing to be heard. Some members of the Red Hunters instinctively gripped their weapons tighter. "Stay sharp," Paul muttered, scanning the tree line. "This is the deeper ridge of the southern ring. The beasts here will be deadlier than the ones we encountered earlier." For a moment there was silence, but unlike the first time, this one didn't last. The snap came from the dark. From the shadows was a screech that shattered birds from the corrupted trees. A monstrosity leapt out. It was huge, about 5 feet wide, with skin like cracked obsidians and 4 eyes glowing like dying stars. Its mouth was unhinged like a snake, revealing rows of serrated teeth and a long, serpentine tongue that writhed as if it had a mind of its own. Spikes jutted from its back and steam hissed from its joints with every monstrous step. "Contact left!" Paul shouted. Big Andy again was the first to step forward with his shield raised just in time. The beasts lunged and smashed against the shimmering barrier he erected. The force was so heavy it rippled through the ground like a small quake, yet the shield held. Jomo and Sahid then rushed from either side, flanking the hound, and with a swift swing they cleaved their weapons into the creature's sides. Blood the color of thick oil splashed across the bush as the beast reeled, but it didn't falter. It roared, slamming its massive limbs downward in a burst of corrupted essence. Both hunters were forced back by the corrupt waves. Then Tosin disappeared into a blur, launching one of his silver boomerangs which sliced through the beast's knee joint, searing through the air in arcs of silver energy. "Got its tendon," he called. "Grounded, Ade." Ade wasted no time. With one swift spin, metallic swords morphed in front of him, shaped in a small circle. His hand flexed anti-clockwise, making the swords rotate to increase the force of their devastating impending damage. With a war cry that rattled the trees, he thrust his palm forward and all swords plunged into the beast's chest, ripping into it like a jagged doll and hurling it backward into a broken trunk. The creature shrieked in agony before laying still in a pool of black ichor. Then Ade felt a sharp pain in his head. It was immediately followed by a throbbing headache that spiked over and over again. This made his eyes twitch in discomfort. Looking down, he noticed something liquid rolling down his nostril. Then he saw the drop of crimson drip down from his nose to the soil. The effect of using the metallurgy was beginning to take its toll on his body like it always did. "Ah, damn it, not this again." He wiped the back of his hand on his nose, smearing the blood all over his hand. He felt like a heavy boulder had been smashed into his head, but he knew there was no time to relax on the battlefield. He needed to find a way to shut out this pain and focus on the battle in front of him. If there was anything Ade could do better than most, it was the ability to endure pain, and so he did. Just then he spotted two smaller creatures, parasites, jawless and eyeless things lunging from both sides with clawed limbs heading for the two defenseless healers of the cohort. "Shit," he muttered to himself. Both girls, realizing they were defenseless, cursed in desperation. Though a prominent healer of the initiate rank, Zara knew nothing about combat. Iaz, on the other hand, was an awakened healer. Though not as proficient as Zara in healing, she knew the basics of combat. Not enough to be a major attacking force of the cohort, but just enough to protect herself if push ever came to shove, just as it was about to be the case. Upon seeing the creatures approach them both, she drew out her dagger and took an action stance.
"Stand behind me, Zara."
They were defenseless at this point because every member of the cohort was preoccupied with one creature or the other, and the formation they had earlier taken had been breached by the big creature Ade had earlier killed. Luckily, Ade and Tosin were nearby. Immediately they moved as one, closing down on both creatures. Just as one parasite lunged for both girls, Tosin slid beneath it, slicing upward with his dagger-infused boomerang. The creature screamed and imploded in a burst of black ichor. At the same time, Ade had intercepted the second small creature. His strong fist came down on it like a sledgehammer. Cracked bones were heard as the force of his hit sent the parasite off course. Tosin hunched his shoulders dramatically, striking a pose like some over-the-top superhero from an animated flick. His eyes flicked to Zara, as if waiting for her to deliver the obvious line that never came. Zara only blinked, her face a canvas of confusion, completely unsure what on earth he was doing. With that trademark mischievous grin tugging at his lips, Tosin leaned in just enough to murmur, "Don't mention it." Then, with an exaggerated wink that lingered a beat too long, he spun on his heels and dashed back into the chaos of the battle. Zara's brows shot upward, disbelief etched across her face. Of all times to act like a clown, this was what he chose. She glanced at Iaz, the other healer, her look practically shouting the question she didn't bother to voice. What is wrong with this guy? For 20-odd minutes the clash endured, the air thick with shrieks and steel. Yet the Red Hunters did not falter. Well-drilled and unshaken, they cut through every beast that lunged at them, their blades striking with ruthless precision. Ade and Tosin were in the thick of the chaos again, this time beside Jomo, who was fighting with her earth essence like an earthquake. Ade was a storm of raw brutality, with his fists cracking through thick carapaces with bone-shaking force. Each strike rang out like force, splintering hardened shells and sending shockwaves through the ground. Beside him, Tosin was all fluid motion, with his boomerang flashing in silver arcs, slicing through throats and carapace joints with deadly precision. He darted in and out of reach, always one step ahead of snapping jaws. Jomo, however, was a force of controlled devastation. Her long machete hewed through limbs with vicious certainty, severing claws and mandibles in single, deliberate strokes. Beneath her feet, the ground shuddered and cracked, pillars of jagged stone erupting upward to impale beasts mid-lunge. When she raised a hand, earth-forged boulder tore itself free from the soil, levitating for an instant before she hurled it with crushing force into a cluster of creatures. The impact sent dust and gore spraying, scattering pile of creatures like broken dolls. The battlefield itself was her weapon, an arena sculpted by her will. Ade's brute force, Tosin's agility, and Jomo's crushing earth combined into a deadly trinity that held the beasts at bay. On the far side, Mr. Paul cut a figure of grim authority. He moved with the composure of a man who had seen 100 hunts and survived them all. His long pole blade spun in deliberate sweeping arcs. Each strike was a product of practiced perfection. Then he pivoted low, cleaving clean through the legs of a charging beast, then rose smoothly, tilting the blade with an upward swing, splitting its torso before it even hit the ground. Another lunged from behind, only to meet the pole's reverse thrust, skewer through its mouth, slamming it back into the dirt. Around him, the chaos seemed to bend into order. Where others hacked wildly, Paul struck with surgical precision, each movement measured and efficient, as though he were conducting a grim symphony of death. His presence steadied the line. The younger hunters mirrored his rhythm, drawing courage from his unshakable form. As the chaos continued, screeches and guttural roars filled the air, mingling with the crack of stone, the clang of metal, and the wet tearing of flesh. Dust clouds rose in swirls, glowing faintly with residue essence, turning the battlefield into a haze of shadow and light. Every few seconds, a creature's body fell, trampled beneath the relentless tide, only for another to be driven back by the coordinated fury of the Red Hunters. Even in that chaos, their synergy showed. Ade would smash open a carapace with his fist, and Tosin's blade would slip in to finish the kill. Jomo's earth spikes forced beasts into tight clusters, where Paul's sweeping pole blades scythed through them in devastating arcs. Each hunter had their rhythm, their strength, their brutality, but together they fought as one. Suddenly, Ade staggered uncomfortably, again grabbing his forehead, still feeling the effect of using his metallurgy ability. Just then, a sudden vertigo seized him. A familiar sensation swept through his body, blurring his vision as if the world was melting into a haze of golden red mist. The corrupt forest, with its twisted trees and guttural roars, dissolved into an oppressive silence, fading the growls of beasts and shouts of hunters like echoes swallowed by a void. His breath caught as a sharp pain lanced through his chest, with a searing heat surging up his spine, igniting his nerves. He staggered, holding his head from the throbbing pain as his other hand clutched his heart. Eventually, he fell to his knees, bracing his hands against the pulsing ground as his knees buckled under the weight of an unseen force. The air began to grow heavy and suffocating, as reality itself seemed to fracture. Then, in an instant, the world shifted. The forest was gone, replaced by a vision that burned with divine ferocity. A vast sky blazed crimson and black, torn asunder by a cataclysmic clash between two titanic forces. The heavens writhed with splintering clouds like shattered glass, as if the very fabric of existence were being ripped apart. Below the clouds, the earth groaned with its surface cracking and crumbling under the weight of a battle too immense for mortals to comprehend. The ground trembled with each collision, rippling shockwaves outward, splitting stones and uprooting ancient trees. Two divine warriors clashed ferociously at the heart of the chaos. Their blades clashed with fury that could sunder mountains. One was a man, of dark brown skin shimmering with red energy across the sky as he battled his opponent. He was a colossus of raw power who moved like a tempest forged in blood and iron. His long red braids, tightly bundled at the nape of his neck, lashed the air like cords of living chaos, glinting with an otherworldly sheen as he surged through the battlefield. A divine crown of red celestial iron rested atop his head, with a surface etched of ancestral runes that pulsed with the heartbeat of war. Unshaken by his relentless motion, the crown seemed fused to his being, a symbol of his dominion over conflict. His face was a masterpiece of fierce majesty, framed by a neatly trimmed beard sharp as a blade's edge. His eyes burned with crimson iris, a primal rage tempered by a warrior's discipline. Their depths radiated a heat that warped the air. Crimson runes like molten veins glowed across his face, arms, and broad chest, each pulsing with a testament to his power, inscribed not just on his flesh but in his soul. His sleeveless battle armor was forged from a rare crimson metal unknown to mortal forges. Its surface was resplendent with power-forged inscriptions. His arms were thick with muscle, every line carved by years of battle. Wound around them were bands of white cowries gleaming against his dark skin like trophies. They weren't mere ornaments, but symbols of his power and divinity. He wielded a massive battle axe of twin blades etched with red runes that ran along its edges. It glowed with the same energy that marked his body, and when he swung it, the air split with a thunderous roar, the scream of metal echoing like a war cry. Each strike was a force of nature, aimed to cleave through his adversary with devastating precision. But his adversary easily parried and dodged his attacks. She was a woman of ethereal grace who had the same deadly intent about her. She moved like darkness given form, like a velvet blade cloaked in divine corruption. Her presence was a paradox of beauty intertwined with darkness. Her every motion was a dance of precision, flair, and finesse. Her twin blades wove through the air in perfect arcs, parrying the man's furious strikes with an elegance that belied their ferocity. A slender crown of black alloy, sharp and regal, sat unmoved upon her head, positioned well on her purple braids that danced to the cadence of her battle movement. Her dark chocolate skin glowed faintly, kissed by an unnatural luster as if infused with the essence of something beyond mortality. Her face was exquisite, perfectly contoured like the divine goddess she was. Her lips was tinged with blackened purple, a color which perfectly depicted her dark enigma. And her eyes, they were tinged with obsidian iris, cold and fathomless, holding the weight of eons while absorbing the heat of the battle with serene inevitability. Her armor was a shimmering shroud of darkness, pulsed with corrupt divine energy, shifting with her movements like a second skin. It was not merely worn by her. It was an extension of her dark corruption that granted her an almost fluid, liquid grace. Unfazed by the earth-shattering blows of the towering man she fought, she moved like a phantom. Her blades met his axe with a clang that sent golden sparks raining down the earth below them. Each parry was effortless, each counterstrike surgical. The clash raged on, blade against blade, god against goddess, as the battlefield trembled under their divine fury. And just like that, the first blood was spilled. With a flicker of dark, corrupt energy, her left sword kissed his lower side, slicing through his crimson armor as a clean slant cut across his torso. Red blood seeped slowly as he staggered back with a low grunt. His eyes widened in surprise as he began to see smaller cuts littered across his body. Clear evidence of her small but relentless devastation and precision. Each wound was a testament to her deadly skill. His once mighty armor was now battered, a chunk torn from his left side as blood flowed freely from a deep gash. Yet in contrast to his battered form, she stood untouched. Her dark armor gleamed, mocking his struggle and battered form, yet there wasn't a single scratch on hers. Still, there was something strange about her gaze, an undertone of sorrow that clung to her expression. Her eyes held a faint glint of regret, tinged with sadness, as if this battle against the warrior before her was a difficult choice she had been reluctant to make, burdened by an unalterable purpose.
"I'm sorry, Ogun."
She said with a voice soft with regret. Ogun, the god of war, grunted in response. His eyes, tinged with crimson iris, blazed not with pain, but with betrayal. His yell shook the heavens, a primal cry of fury and experience of betrayal as he lunged again, swinging his axe with earth-shattering force, but just like always, she was ready. With a fluid dodge, she sidestepped left. Her blade, laced with dark, corrupt energy, carved its way through his flesh into his ribs. In a blink, she was at his right, another slash biting deep into his side. Then she vanished, reappearing paces away, with a calm stance, as if granting him a moment to breathe. He dropped to one knee, planting his axe into the ground for support. His breathing was ragged as blood streamed from wounds across his body. Yet his eyes remained defiant, burning with unyielding resolve. Then slowly he lifted his head. His crimson eyes met her obsidian, and for a long, aching moment, silence reigned with the air between them trembling in sorrow and disbelief. With a voice raw from pain, he whispered, "Danruma." "Why?" She said nothing. She only looked at him with eyes heavy of regret, shimmering with the kind of sorrow that could never be cleansed. It was the gaze of someone who knew the full weight of her sin, and the inevitability of what must come next.
"As much regret as I harbor, this has to be done,"
she finally said with a whispering voice tinged with sorrow. Gripping her twin blades tighter, she raised them high with their edges glinting in a dark promise of inevitability. Then she lunged for the final blow.
Greetings to you all, viewers and wanderers of Essence. Thank you for watching and listening to the creative retelling of Chapter 2, Into the Veil of Severance. As always, I hope you enjoyed this divine lore. More so, I hope the action and storytelling was enough to keep you at the edge of your seat. I assure you this is only the beginning, and there is more action and adventure to come. The journey ahead will be long, perilous, and magnificent beyond imagining. So stay attuned to the channel. For Chapter 3 descends next week, and with it, we dive deeper into the mythical world of the divine Schism. If this chapter resonated with your soul, leave your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and join the growing legion of those who walk between gods and men. As always, I am Xenos, keeper of the divine lore,